Welcome to the XY Advisor podcast. To join a global community of financial advisors sharing and learning with one another to drive the positive evolution of financial advice, head to xyadvisor.com. Both Zurich and Onepath life insurance offerings deliver the broadest range of offerings in the market with a combined 4 distinct solutions on offer to better serve all Australians. At Zurich and Onepath, we believe in the value of advice and the professionals who provide it. This means investing in more ways to help your clients and making it easier for you to do business with us. To find out more about how we can help you and your clients, contact your Zurich and Onepath Life or Zurich Investments representative today. Clayton here from XY Advisor, discussing financial therapy today with Rick, and it's Kahler.
Kahler, yes.
Awesome. All the way over in the States, mate. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thanks. It's really good to be with you. I have an affinity for Australia. So,
have you spent any time over here before?
I have spent some time. I spoke at an event over there. It was called the Nasrudin Project. It's a group of financial planners, coaches, and therapists.
Oh, wow.
And so I've been to Sydney, I've been to Adelaide, and then I told my friends in Sydney I liked Adelaide, and I lost immediate standing with them.
we call it Radelaide because it's so rad.
And to Melbourne.
Yeah.
And around. I mean, I haven't spent gobs of time, maybe a total of a month or so, but it's a delightful country.
Well, mate, it's nice of you to say so. What was the name of the conference did you say you spoke at? Because I'd never heard of that before.
It's called the Nasrudin Project.
Nasrudin Project.
Nasrudin was a mythical 15th century prophet.
Right.
And there's a movement in the States that was founded in 1994-95 by George Kinder and Dick Wagner. And they got their curiosity up because as planners, we give people wonderful financial plans. And about a third of them wouldn't do the exact plan that solved their problem, at least that they stated. And they got thinking, maybe there's something emotional going on here. So they formed this group and named it the Nasrudin Project. And it's a leaderless group of financial planners, coaches, and therapists who get together once a year. They have no agenda when they come together. In 2 hours, they create a 2-day conference with 3 tracks. And it's the best thing I go to every year. And it's been going on since then. So it's in its 26th year or so.
That sounds so cool. I'm not
so
even lying.
Exactly answer your question. There's Wayne Lear is a CFP in Australia, and he would come up to the Nasrudin meetings, as are there several other now from Australia. And he wanted to do what he called Nas Down Under. So he put together the first Nasrudin meeting in Australia, and I was fortunate enough to be able to come down, and we had a great time.
Oh my God. This is like a secret society of financial planners I had never heard of. This is super cool.
Well, it is. If you try to Google it, I don't think you're going to find much.
Oh, it's even better. You sent me on a quest now to find out more. This is cool.
I could get you into the listserv.
Oh, I would love that.
Yeah,
please.
So it's $50 and interest in the emotional side of money.
Oh my God.
And we only raise money when we want to pare the list, when we think it's gotten too big.
Oh,
so it's not $50 a year. It's just $50 to whenever the next time is you want money.
Right, this sounds super cool. I am not kidding. I definitely want in on this Nasrudin project. Oh my God. one of the interesting things I find about financial planning is the more I've had the chance to, I guess, deep dive into financial planning as a subject for about 5 or 6 years, almost as long as my career in financial planning. So I sold my financial planning business a couple of years ago, and these days I just work full time for XY. And the interesting thing about it is the more conversations I have, the more I discover that people have been trying to figure out what this financial planning thing means for far longer than I ever, in some cases, have been born. I interviewed.
Well, yeah, we've been at this 40 years. There's still not a legal definition of financial planning.
It's crazy, isn't it? It is crazy.
Totally crazy.
Yeah. And so when we were putting together this, the series is mental health. So we're both for financial planners, but probably focused more on the mental health of our clients. And we're going through this list, and we want to interview 10 people. And as I'm going through this process of interviewing people, I start hearing this term financial therapy, financial therapist. And I'm going, okay, this is a term I haven't heard. And then it turns out that there's a group of people that are coming at financial advice from a therapy point of view, from a traditionally, let's call it marriage therapy, or just focusing on the psychological nature. And that as financial stress is often the largest stress, that these people have built up their financial capabilities and have merged their knowledge of humans with their knowledge of money. And it's dawned on me that this is not necessarily a new thing, but it is definitely a powerful thing. And I'm kind of figuring out why it's not more well known. Our staff here in Australia, Chilla, who's our head of ops, she recommended we speak to you. And then I saw you're the first person I've seen with the title financial therapist. So I was wondering if you could share with us what your background is, and let's go from there.
Yeah. So I am a certified financial therapist level 1. I think I was officially the 4th one in the nation. So there's a good reason why you have not heard about this. The Financial Therapy Association was formed in 2010. So it's surprising to me it's even 10 years old. But it's not surprising that you have never heard of this and that it's not well known. It is in its infancy as a profession. So a little bit of how it came to be. It actually came out of the work of the Nasrudin Project, because the Nasrudin Project is bringing together emotions and money. So the Financial Therapy Association came out of that when there was a group of about 30 of us in 2009 got together and just tried to decide, is financial therapy a thing or not? And we decided we think it's a thing. And so we started the association. And I think that the power, you alluded to this, behind financial therapy is you have the therapists who are experts in behavioral change. You have the financial planner who are experts in money. And there's a fellow by the name of Daniel Kahneman who won the Nobel Prize in, I think it was 2002. He won in economics. Now, the crazy thing is he was a psychologist. How does a psychologist win the Nobel Prize in economics? Well, he did research that showed 90% of all financial decisions are made emotionally.
Wow.
Now, what that means is that they're made in the limbic system, not the cerebral cortex. And the cerebral cortex is where we think. And it takes lots of effort to think. This is really discouraging news to financial planners, because they think that they think about money. That certainly the 90-10 rule doesn't apply to them. The bad news is they have the same brain as everybody else.
Right.
And we make 90% of our financial decisions in a nanosecond. in the limbic system. They're emotional decisions.
Hmm.
So it kind of occurred to me back around 2000 when I got into the Nasrudin project and got interested in this, that, well, if 90% of all financial decisions are made emotionally, and financial planners think 90% of all decisions are made logically, maybe I better learn more about the brain.
Wow. Yeah.
If I want to stay relevant, because back in 2000, the thought was investments are going to be made a commodity.
Mm-hmm.
And what's going to be left? The planning and the relationship. Well, today, roll ahead 20 years, financial planning is becoming a commodity.
Mm-hmm.
And what's going to be left? The relationship, period. So I think it behooves anybody interested in financial planning and helping people financially to become very much a student of human behavior, the human brain, communication skills. So far, there isn't a computer that can put all this together. Now, maybe 20 years from now, it'll be quite different. But so as I explain it to people, that you have your therapist over here, and by and large, when you mention money to a therapist, it's like a cockroach running from light. It's like, oh my God, no, you're not one of those money people. Oh, money, that's bad, that's evil. And when you mention emotions to a traditional financial planner, it's the same thing. Like, what did you just say? It was unimportant. Let's get back to the mutual fund chart. So you have this huge gap in the middle where people live around their money, which is not making 90% of all their financial decisions emotionally. And who addresses that? Your therapists aren't equipped and your financial planners aren't equipped. And
Yes.
that's where the idea of a financial therapist comes in. So financial therapy, and therapy is a bad word, we think. We actually tried to rename the Financial Therapy Association, and we couldn't come up with another name. Like the financial psychology is a great name, but there's all sorts of legal problems with saying we're about financial psychology and financial counseling. I mean, we really tried. But it is the blending of emotions and money, of psychology and financial planning. So for someone to step into that space and do it well, they need to have training in financial planning, and they need to have training in therapy or coaching or some type of on the emotional side or behavior change. So that's what we've been purporting or pushing, is that to really bring the greatest value to our clients, we need to have competencies in both areas. Now, most planners, if I have a master's degree in therapy, which would be here like a degree in clinical mental health counseling, and I have a CFP, those are very two different realms, right?
Oh, yeah.
One is left brain.
Yeah.
One is right brain, right?
Yeah.
Most of us are drawn to one or the other.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm left brain drawn. So it's been a great work for me to become aware of the behavioral principles of learning myself emotionally. I feel far more comfortable in the numbers. But I have developed those competencies, and I can, I'm comfortable in that area. I'm not brilliant, but I'm comfortable. You have a lot of planners that get into planning so they can be with people.
Yes.
And the relationship is important, and they just hate the numbers. It's like, oh man, I got to struggle through this stuff so I can be a planner.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I typically find that even though a person is double degreed or has the training in each area, they tend to like one area over the other.
Mm-hmm.
I also tend to purport that the best experience for the client, for the consumer, is to be working with two financial therapists. One that is really skilled in the therapy area,
Mm-hmm.
and one that's really skilled in the numbers.
Do you do that in your practice?
Yes.
Wow. So each person has two financial planners.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. We have two people in every meeting, and we will have one person playing the role of
Mhm.
the analytical planner,
Mm-hmm.
the left brain planner, and we will have another person playing the role of we call it a relational planner, or
Okay.
the therapist. And for example, we have one of our associates is double degree. She has a CFP, and she also has a master's in clinical mental health counseling.
Wow.
She also has a master's in mechanical engineering.
Wow. You should be my financial
But that
planner.
was her
Gosh.
previous life.
That's fantastic.
We have another planner who's a CFP, and he's getting his certificate from Golden Gate University in financial life planning.
I have heard that one. Yes.
What have I done? I don't have any formal training in therapy.
Wow. Really?
I have about 20 years of being in therapy, co-facilitating therapy groups. I am a certified financial therapist level 1.
Right.
There's going to be 3 levels.
Whoa.
Of which I will never be the 3rd level, because that's a licensed therapist CFP, right?
Right. Understood.
So I'm the laggard of the group.
Yeah.
But we just think it's really important to provide that to our clients.
Yeah. I mean, it's an extremely valuable service to get access to someone who's looking after your rational side and after your emotional side, and to have almost specialists in the same room. Now, as that's happening, is this a bad way to think of it? But are they having a good cop, bad cop relationship, or are they having an angel and demon relationship, or how are they competing against each other for which is the best decision, or are they coming at it from a combined we've done the work in the background and collectively we're here to we come with a unified front? Or what is that dynamic like when there's let's say it's just an individual, not a couple, but there's two financial planners? What's that dynamic like?
That's a really interesting question. They are a team. Okay, so it's really important that both of these planners
Mm-hmm.
are duly trained, right?
Yes.
Because the professional needs to know. I mean, it's possible that you can have a pure therapist and a pure financial planner doing this with a client, but they still have got to have done their own work, which is called countertransference work in the mental health profession.
Okay.
Which means if I'm going to be in a session with a client, we're going to talk about money, and I got all sorts of problems and issues around money. As the therapist, maybe I better not be in that session.
Wow. Right.
Because I'm going to get triggered. Same with the planner. If we're getting into therapy areas that I haven't done my own therapy around, I'm going to get triggered, right?
Yep.
So you've got to have both of these professionals that understand something about the other.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really important that they walk the walk. That you're not asking a client to do an exercise or to do something you haven't done yourself. You're not asking a client to look at some place in their past history or look at their family dynamics, and you haven't done your own work.
Yes.
That's highly, highly important. So the relationship between the two is very collegial. It's a team. For example, when I will work with somebody playing the therapist role, and the client wanders into some area. I'll explain, like, one of the areas I am least brilliant in is when a couple starts fighting.
Sure.
Okay. There's a part of me that goes and hides under the nearest table. All right. And that's because of my history. I am so happy in that moment to have somebody else in the room that gets excited. Oh, great. A fighting couple. This is so cool. And they can just be present with them and hang out and say, when you said this, and they'll unpack it for 20 minutes. And then you said this, and they'll unpack it for 20 minutes. I can relax because that's not my genius whatsoever. So, and it's likewise when you have, especially when you have a therapist that doesn't have a huge amount of training in finance, they are so happy to have the planner in the room, right?
Yeah.
And this is why you need both, because traditional therapists don't understand finance. I mean, in a rough term, they can be bamboozled by the client around money because they have no context of finance or laws or any of this.
Yeah.
But when you have the planner in the room, boom, you have instant explanation, or you have somebody there that can hold that space of what's real around money. And likewise, the planner has somebody that can sit back and relax when it's time to go into the more emotionally charged areas. What I typically find is a good team knows when to shut up. Each other knows when to shut up. That's really important if you're the planner, because there is a big difference here. And this really occurred to me the other day. As a planner, we are programmed to give advice, right? That's what people come to us for. That's what we're paid for.
Mm-hmm.
Therapists are paid not to give advice. They are paid to listen, to reflect, to be with the client, and help them discover the path that is right for them, right? So you have this friction, and I see this friction within myself as I'm with a client. There's a time to be with a client, and there's a time to give advice. And this is a real hard one. It's been very hard for me to learn, and I'm still learning it. For example, when don't you give advice? Whenever you get resistance. You can assume that a client is there to get advice until they go, no, or no, I'm not going to do that. And you're like, let's see, you came to me because you're worried about retirement and you're overspending, and I've just done the numbers and I've told you need to save $4,000 a month, and now you're telling me no.
Yeah.
Okay, that's resistance, and resistance means you're moving too fast.
You're moving too fast in terms of you don't quite have the relationship that's required, or moving too fast as in you've gone from, let's call it fact finding, into advice too quickly.
Yes, it would be more the latter.
Right.
It's, okay, I thought that I've heard everything. I've delivered what they've asked for, and I'm hitting resistance. Or it's kind of like somebody coming to us wanting a distribution from their retirement plan. How do I take that? And you're looking at them and you see they have absolutely no estate plan, or they have absolutely no liability coverage, or something that's just glaring. Like the distribution here is the smallest part of your problem. Do you realize that while you might have a little cut on your hand, we have this mass inside of one of your lungs?
Yeah.
And you get resistance on that. No. Some excuse or some reason. And it's like, they're not ready to see that area. So that's where the learning to be with somebody is so important. That's where the therapeutic methodologies become so important. In the past, all I did is I just hit the nail harder with the hammer.
Yeah, same.
Like, what part of this don't you get?
Yeah.
maybe if I raise my voice and say the same thing again, they'll get it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting here thinking about all the poor times that I came up against resistance, and my strategies that I dealt with it were horrible. Like simply saying, "Oh, you feel a little bit uncomfortable doing this, do you? That's okay. I'm sure you'll get used to it." You know what I mean? Like that's that. So I would implement the solution without because I was such an outcomes focused advisor, and I'm really proud of the outcomes that I achieved. But I was very poor at pulling at taking them along a journey so that they felt like they were the ones creating the advice for themselves, and done in such a way that there was total emotional buy-in. For me, it was just a case of, it was rather abrupt. It was, okay, this is what you were doing, but this is what we're doing now. And there was a fork in the road, and that fork was my advice. And that was how I justified my fees to them, to myself. I was justifying my fees. And as I've gone on this process of learning more and more about advice, I think back to those decisions, and it wasn't pressing to implement that advice. What I should have done is spent more time on that journey with the person. Let's dive deeper into what the problems are. Let's figure out why the resistance is there. And I look back at my past and say, I wish I'd done things better. But, for whatever reason, there's just not a lot of information available for the majority of financial planners. For example, not everyone has access to the Baz Rutten project. Was it the Baz Rutten project?
Naz
Rutten. That Baz Rutten is
somebody else.
Yes, he's someone completely different. He's an old school MMA fighter. So Naz Rutten. Yeah. That makes more sense. So I look back at my previous advice and I say, okay, I could have done that better. How does an advisor go from a state of not being aware that they're doing something wrong to being aware that they're doing something wrong to then learning how to fix it and then ultimately providing better advice? Because the solution that you're using, I think, is very high quality. However, it's probably not achievable for the majority of advisors to have 2 staff members go through each client. If you look at it from an economic point of view, you're not doubling the fixed costs, but you're probably increasing it by maybe 50%, something along those lines. I think it's a brilliant idea, and I hope an advisor listens to this podcast and then goes on to do it. I would find that very fascinating. But probably for the majority of advisors, if they were to start making these changes, if I think back to myself as a planner, I would attempt to do the emotional piece of the therapy side of advice better. That would be my interim solution. Perhaps at some stage I built up where I could have 2, but at least start improving my ability to handle that intersection of money and emotions at a higher level. So to that end, at what stage do you think a client can be handled by a financial planner before they need to see a psychologist? Like, from where you're looking, how to 1 out of 10, I'm not sure the description to use, maybe disturbed, how upset would a client need to be before even a practice like yours would say, we're not capable of handling this, you need to go see a psychologist? So, because if I think back to my practice, I was at say 2 out of 10, maybe 3. I was really just down that very, I wasn't emotionally absent, but it just wasn't a part of what I was delivering. And I could handle basically a little resistance. And if they didn't want to work within this confinement, then we probably wouldn't work together. As I've sort of delved into this mental health series, I can see that there's a lot of advisors who are handling that relationship a lot further up that scale, handling bigger problems. And let's face it, getting better results. Ultimately, at the end of the day, if I'm an outcomes focused advisor, then I actually want to play in this space more and more and more because I can play a larger and larger and larger role. And I'm sure this is a crude way to imagine it, but how far between 0 being not at all and 10 being that someone is in a really bad shape? At what stage can your financial therapy handle until it's beyond the skill set of your office?
Yeah. That's a question that one of my co-authors, who is a psychologist, got a lot. How far can you go before you do harm to the client?
Yes.
And I think that's kind of framing up what you've said.
Precisely.
How do I know when I have exceeded my skill set?
Yes.
And his answer was I think, brilliant. He said, whenever you feel uncomfortable, when you feel like, oh, I do not know it. Because it's different, even for therapists, it's different. Therapists will refer out to other therapists.
Really?
So it's quite a continuum. And I think it's great to frame it up on a 1 to 10 because, probably most of the clients we deal with, if 10 is having really, that have had a lot of trauma and really are damaged, and 1 is the perfectly most healthy emotional person in the world, probably most of our clients hang between 3 and 7.
Oh, yeah.
So, because not every client is the same. And so we've got to present differently. For example, I've worked with actual therapists and their clients, and say we'll do a whole day of financial therapy. I've had days where I talk for 15 minutes and the therapist worked with the clients for the rest of the time.
Wow.
I've had other days where the therapist talked for 15 minutes and ran the calculator for the rest of the day. So you just got to go with where the client is. And it's one of the big things that we learn about is you go with the client's agenda. What is top of the client's agenda, not mine? Now, I have agenda. I have some things that I'd like to get answered, but they may not be able to hear anything that I'm saying until they get their agenda. So, and the therapists are very good at this, at following the client's agenda. And a couple of things I'd like to respond to is the way you were practicing, you've been a little hard on yourself. It's the traditional way that financial planning is done. That you've come here, here's what you've presented, here's what you've asked for, here's the solutions, right?
Yeah.
And it works really good when a person is in the action stage. There's something called Changing for Good by Petraska. It's a book, and it's on the stages of change. And the stage that we think most clients are in when they come to us is the action stage. The problem is that only about 20% of the clients that come to us are in the action stage. And they're typically in the action stage over exactly what they've come to us for. Not necessarily anything else. And the first stage is pre-contemplation, meaning we would often call it denial. Like, right. I'm not even aware that there is any problem. And if you see the problem, you are the problem because I don't have a problem. So one of the options has always been, as you alluded to, well, if I can't work with the people, hey, I can't work with you folks, go find another financial planner. And that's an okay business model. I mean, it's perfectly okay to say I'll work with people who want the solutions and actually mean what they tell me, which is another problem because people often don't know what they really want.
Absolutely.
They're objective. What are your goals and objectives? That's about all the communication training a financial planner gets. State your goals and objectives. And they'll say, well, here's my father's goal for me. Here's society's goal. Here's what I think I should be here. Here's what I think I should be doing. Yeah. And that's why when we present the plan, it falls dead because really it's not their plan, but they don't even know that. Right?
Wow, man, that is deep.
So, so what you've alluded to is exactly right. I don't think you need to get a master's in counseling. I don't think a planner needs to go to that extreme. I think we need to start learning more and more about ourselves emotionally. That's where it really starts, quite frankly. You cannot add behavioral competencies by reading a book.
Absolutely.
It's not academically learned. I mean, yes, there's lots of counseling that's academics, but when you start learning how to be with a client, and really the most successful therapy, and I can't give you the site on this because I haven't been able to find it, but a psychologist told me this once, and I've had complete agreement on it from them. So I think it's close to being true. That is, for successful therapy, you first have to have a bond with the therapist. And I've been told that's 40% of it. All right. Trust, rapport, a bond. And the next thing that the therapist has to have is really exquisite listening, a deep ability to listen. And that's 30% of it. So 70% of successful therapy is a bond with the therapist and the therapist's ability to listen.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I would submit to you, you don't have to go do 2 years of college to learn that. In fact, you could do 2 years of college and not know a thing about how to really listen deeply.
Yeah.
And any financial planner, first of all, that the bond is incredibly important. We know we can't do anything without that. And we're talking to people about the most intimate thing they can talk about, their money. So that bond comes very, very natural to a financial plan. So it's adding the deep listening skills. If someone listening to this can do one thing, it's just go out and get into a experiential course that will teach you how to listen. And listening is lifelong learning. It's one of the most difficult things I've ever had to learn is how to listen, how to be with another individual. And so it's that simple, and yet it's that complex, because listening is something, I mean, I've taken some of the same courses over 2 and 3 times. Nonviolent communication, NVC, nonviolent communication.
Nonviolent communication.
I have listened to the book by the founder of that 5 times, 6 times.
Whoa.
You just cannot get enough of it because it's, well, it's really timeless. Nonviolent communication is a great thing for any planner to get curious about. It probably, if there's one thing that I'd recommend.
Is that a book or a subject?
Yeah, there's books. I think the founder's name was Rosenberg, and you can find his books on Amazon. He's passed away, but his books are great, and he has them on Audible audio books too. Just Google nonviolent communication, and there's a NVC. I think it might even be nvc.org website you can go to, and it is the one best source of learning how to listen that I know of. And
That's
there's
awesome.
actually little groups all around the world. Sydney probably has one, an MVC group, where you go and you can practice.
Wow. So if I was to sort of pick a couple of things that you've mentioned during this podcast, one of them, and I thought this was a really good insight, one of them was, when you've gone or you've overstepped your mark, when you're uncomfortable and you don't know what to do. Then another thing is, in order to get or expand what you are comfortable with, this nonviolent communication is something to learn that will probably get you from, let's say, where I was at 3, maybe up to 4, or maybe up to 5, right? And so yes. what I can kind of take from this is it's expanding the level. As a planner, our goal should be to expand the level that we're comfortable having those conversations and being really clear on when we're out of our depth. And I think if nothing else, what a great thing to take from financial therapy as a really good starting point.
And the deeper you go into yourself, the more you're going to be able to understand your clients. You can't take a client any further than you've gone yourself. So when I get uncomfortable is when I'm starting to get triggered. And so when I start looking at that part of myself, that allows me now to be there for that client. In other words, I used to be very uncomfortable when there was ever any tears. Like, oh my God, there's tears. Quick, talk about the mutual fund.
Yeah.
As I started looking, well, why am I afraid of tears? What's going on with me? Well, it's about me. It's about me being uncomfortable. And it's about, this means something that I need to look at. And as I look at those issues within myself, I remember the first time I had a lady start crying, a client, and she'd been diagnosed breast cancer.
It's tough.
And in the past, I would have gone, oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, let's take a look here at the graph. And I remember I reached over and got a Kleenex and gave it to her. Now, to most people listening to this podcast, they'd be going, is this guy daft? Good grief. Wouldn't anybody do that? No.
Yeah.
I wouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I did that, it was like, wow. What I was doing is like I was inviting her tears. Like, the numbers aren't really important now. What's important is being with this person who's had this terrible diagnosis. So as we start being more comfortable with our emotions, a lot of us live life pushing away emotions, pushing away anger, pushing away fear, pushing away sadness. When we start to understand that those emotions are neutral, they're given to us to give us information about something that's going on within us. And that a lot of us get the idea they're bad, that there's bad emotions. There are not bad emotions. There are emotions, like money. Is money bad? Is money good? No, money is. It just is.
Yes.
Same with emotions. They just are. And so as we learn to start embracing emotions and welcoming feelings and actually feeling the feelings rather than running from them, then we can do that with our clients. Like, oh, I used to really resist sadness, but I don't resist it anymore. I welcome it. And now I can be with a client.
Wow. So realistically then, the goal, the lifetime goal or the lifetime learning for a financial planner is there's only so many certified things that one can be when it comes to the academic side of financial planning, right? When you're calculating by hand 50,000 Monte Carlo algorithms, perhaps you've reached your peak. And yet that's all we've really focused on in financial planning. But as financial planning evolves and matures and becomes far more emotional in nature and psychology focused, I should say, then it's conversations like this that I think really will help advisors step up. And I've found this subject, and I'm almost getting to the end of this 10-part subject, but I found this conversation in particular to be very how-to, because although it's an ethereal subject, you still need a bit of a roadmap on how to get better at this. And so I want to thank you for sharing not just your view on wow, like a career in exploring this, but also there's a couple of really good steps in there for advisors to actually start doing. And so for that, mate, I just really want to thank you for coming on and sharing. Before we wrap up, what's the best way for anyone out there just to say hi or to find out more about your advice practice?
Yeah, I have a book that I'd recommend that I wrote to financial planners
Oh,
on
wow.
how to do this. I mean, it's got the forms I still use with clients. It's got exercises. It's the textbook I use in the course I teach at Golden Gate University, and it's called Facilitating Financial Health. It's you want the 2016, the second edition, and that is everything I know in a book. And it was also written with a couple psychologists.
Huh.
So that would be one thing. I have a blog I send out once a week that can be found at financialawakenings.com. And it's not always about financial therapy, but I do try to address the emotions of things. Because financial therapy does have two parts, and one is financial.
Absolutely.
And as financial planners, we focus on the therapy part, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But the financial part is still 50% of the equation.
Agree. Yeah.
So those are two ways that a person can learn more about what I do. And then I have a fun read called The Financial Wisdom of Ebenezer Scrooge. And that will ruin the Christmas Carol for you forever if you read that.
Awesome. Oh, mate. Well, I could spend hours, but out of respect for your time, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. It's obviously a little bit later in the afternoon for you, so you've had a long day ahead. You've had a long day. I've got the long day ahead. So thank you.
You got a long day ahead. Yes.
Exactly, mate. Thank you very much for coming on. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Cheers, mate.